Your Excellency, the Right Honourable Prime Minister, members of Cabinet present here today, Principal Secretaries, Your Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, colleagues from the private sector, and representatives of state-owned entities, also representatives of the Central Bank, the Commissioner General of SRA. Good morning to all of you. I don't have much time, Honourable Prime Minister, so I'll try and be brief and to the point. But I think the most important thing for us today is just to understand that this plan, as big as it is not going to see the light of day if we don't galvanize all our energies behind it as a team and as a Maswati, because this is not just for one particular entity. The government cannot exist without all of us playing our part, and private sector cannot exist without, the social sector and all the other sectors of the economy. So we all need each other. So for this to happen and for this to be a success, we're seeking the support of every other stakeholder that is involved. I'll just go through the key enablers list, and I don't have much time, as I said, but I'll just keep it high level and hope people will read as we go through, and the presentation I'm sure will be made available to the nation. So one of the things that you've brought up here is the cost of communication, especially data. This can prohibit the ability for business to trade. With the pandemic, the cost of data has become a very important factor. We saw our bills increase from an average of 350,000 per month to over 1 million per month in just my business alone, let alone all the other businesses sitting around here. Just because we're increasing the volume of data and communication, we're having online meetings, it's very expensive. And unless we do something about it, it is a very important enabler for private sector and business. Cases in the judiciary do seem to take time, particularly commercial cases. Some of them are not complex, some of them could be dealt quicker. We are appealing to the Minister of Justice. We know that there is a plan that they're working on to make sure that this happens, but this is a very important enabler for us to deal with cases, whether someone wants to foreclose on an asset. It shouldn't be taking 2 years to recover an asset once a bank, for instance, needs to foreclose on an asset. It should be something that is quicker, and the key enabler is the justice system. Tax reform, I think there are a lot of issues around tax reform, and I know that the Commissioner General and the Minister of Finance are already working on some of those enablers that we need there. But most importantly, SMEs are complaining that they cannot be charged in a similar way as large corporates, and they would prefer for a process to be employed where there's a jurisdiction in tax that allows for a percentage of revenue or something like that makes it easier for them. I think South Africa has a similar model, and I know that the Minister of Finance is working on this already. But these are all important enablers for this plan to be a success. One of the things that is built into this, obviously we're talking about more than 30 billion of projects, and a lot of investors are going to need to come into the country. So we need to rethink the access to temporary residence permits, and that must not take a long time for us as a country to do. Obviously we want to give it to the right people. We don't want everyone, because we're a small country, so we don't want our country to we don't want it to be taken over, but at the same time, for those people that want to invest and create opportunities for work in the kingdom, we want to make sure that there is ease of getting the permits, and temporary residence permit obviously coming into play here. One of the things the government is looking at is encouraging companies to set up their regional head offices in the kingdom. Now, if you're going to set up a regional head office in the kingdom, you need to allow those companies wanting to do that to employ people from the, if I, for instance, bring the Standard Bank regional office from South Africa to Eswatini, that office is mainly occupied by people working in the 20 countries that we operate in. So there should be ease of getting work permits to do that as an important enabler for that type of business thrive. Leverage RSTP and unbundle EPTC and establish an IXP. I think we've been talking about this for a long time, but the Royal Science and Technology Park infrastructure has been set for this technology. We know that the partnership that sits between MTN and SPTC is not good for the business, and that's why the government made the decision to unbundle SPTC and make sure that there's a fixed line operator, there's a mobile operator, but also there's the infrastructure company that provides services to all this, and that cannot be done by one entity as it is the case now. Having our own IXP and making sure that internet access is a local business, it's not an international business like it is the case now. I think the infrastructure is there, it's just we need to make sure we implement this as soon as possible. So under the tax reform, I've already touched on some of the issues here. Establish a tax dispensation for different industrial zones, so for finance, textiles, sugar, timber. Some developed countries do have models that work here, and I think we're encouraging the government to also consider working through this. Set up separate fund for SRA to remit VAT, rebates and refunds. I think there's been a complaint that it takes a very long time to get your money back. Obviously, SRA collects money and hands it over to the government. Once it's in the fiscal, it's very difficult to recycle it back, but an independent VAT account that can help with such processes can make it easier. Remove exemption on electricity. So electricity is currently totally exempt, and because of that exemption, you cannot claim your VAT if you incur costs of putting up infrastructure. So all that business is saying is it would be good if the government can consider allowing or bringing electricity into the VAT arena so that investors and particularly IPPs, independent power producers, can be able to claim their VAT in the normal case like all other large business operators. Integrate Eswatini VAT system with Mozambique. I think we already have a very smooth integration between the country and South Africa with regards to VAT. But I think we've lost a lot of trade with Mozambique. Whilst people used to come and do their shopping here, now they go to Nelspruit because as soon as they go back to Mozambique, they get all their VAT refund at the border. We are saying that, as a country, we can also do the same. A lot of people in Mozambique love to come to Eswatini, but if they cannot claim their tax back, they then have to pay tax twice, because when they go into Mozambique, they're also charged VAT for all the goods that they bring in from the kingdom. So I think these are the key enablers that we believe will make it easy to implement the strategy. I think one of the, obviously 30 billion investment requires energy, and I think we cannot overemphasize the importance of making sure that the country can not only get energy, we're totally dependent on Eskom now. I think we only generate about 15% of our needs as a country. And I think we're saying that we need to open up investments in energy in a way that can not only supply the country's needs, but can also attract other investors to come and invest in the kingdom. Cabinet to trigger a joint border cooperation agreement. Obviously, we don't have 24-hour borders with South Africa, and I think we're asking for that because it's very important that border is open 24 hours. We already have a 24-hour border with Mozambique. There's absolutely no reason why we don't have it with South Africa. There's a lot of opportunities in the mining sector. We know that there's currently a process to relook at the mining legislation to enable those investors to come in. But if we're going to really recover, and I think listed in the projects are also certain mining projects that are going to have to take place, and they cannot if there are still restrictions in the mining sector. So we're saying that mining can really play a very big role in the economy. We've seen obviously the operation of the gold mine that's already there, and I think they're increasing capacity now to make sure they can get more gold out of the Pittsburgh Mountains or the Wall Mountains. Stop over-regulating the economy. I think we're a very small economy. In fact, in some standards, we're equivalent to one large corporate in terms of the size of the country and the size of number of people that are living in this country. So we feel that as private sector, there is a lot of regulation. We create a lot of bottlenecks for us to just do business in the normal way. Obviously, let us regulate industries that need regulation. If you want to go into the cannabis business, yes, there's regulation required there because you want to make sure that it's used for medicinal purposes as well. So you enforce regulation there, but to try and regulate everything that happens in a smaller country, it can also create more bottlenecks than it is necessary. The launch of the state business relations, I think the Prime Minister has already announced this before, and I think we're seeking for the government to make this happen now, because I think the business Eswatini environment is being set up to accommodate what the government wishes to achieve with the private sector. Monitor the implementation of the recovery plan. I think these big projects require a lot of focus and a lot of energy from all of us. And I think all we're saying here is that we all need to play a part. And if there's a bottleneck somewhere, we need to be very agile in arriving at quick decisions and making sure that there are no bottlenecks along the way, so that we can create the necessary jobs post-COVID and make sure there are no hiccups in the implementation of the plan. A call to save the economy from further collapse. I think previous speakers have already addressed that. Spending in the current budget deficit, I think there's always, economists always start here when they talk about fiscal adjustment. If you're spending more than you are earning, you're going to have to review that. So these are some of the proposals that have been put in place. So we know that this is not a question of to removing a number, because behind this there are people, behind this there are jobs. So it's as difficult as it is, but economists always put it like that. You need to reduce your salaries by so much so that you spend at least 30% of your revenue on salaries instead of 40 or 50% as the case may be. So the push factor of the fiscal adjustment is the unsustainability levels of triggering the ability to repay awarded loans. So the risk of not doing some of these things is that the debt that we are currently taking on as a country may not be able to service it. So it's important that we move at speed to review. I know that in Parliament currently there is a budget discussion, or I heard in the radio. So I want to believe that that is also dealing with these issues of dealing with the budget. The financing gap. There's funding that's been made available, and I think in the discussions in preparing this plan, we spent a lot of time talking about sources of finance. And what we're saying is that if these projects are private sector led, private sector will have access to finance. And people wonder why it is difficult to get finance. If you don't have a bankable feasibility study on your project, you will not get finance. Whether it's from local banks or from international finance institutions. But if you have a bankable study that is well thought and well done to sell itself even without the person presenting it, there is more money in the world for projects. So the country is not going to run short of money. So is government. I think the Minister of Finance has already presented this before on the access to funding that the government has managed to raise to finance the gap over the next couple of months until the rest of the year. That's it. Thank you, Honourable Prime Minister. I think I finished right on time. I had 15 minutes.